Ambassador Krelvathis stood at the large window of his ship and looked out into the darkness of space. His ship was called the Gentle Whisper, and it was the lead vessel of the Zinthari diplomatic fleet. The Zinthari were a peaceful race. They had traveled the stars for over 300 years, and in all that time, they had never fired a weapon at another species. Krelvathis was proud of this fact. His people had found 12 young civilizations and helped them grow. They had made friends with 20 more advanced races. The Zinthari believed that kindness was the answer to everything. They believed that all intelligent life wanted peace and friendship. This belief had never been tested. Not really. The ambassador's body was covered in smooth blue skin. He had 4 eyes that could see in many directions at once. Instead of arms, he had 6 long tentacles that moved like flowing water. He was old by his people's standards, over 200 years, and he had spent most of that time meeting new species and signing treaties of friendship. Today would be different. Today, he would meet humanity. The Zinthari had first detected human radio signals almost 100 years ago. The signals came from a small planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy. The humans had been broadcasting their music, their stories, and their news into space without knowing anyone was listening. The Zinthari had listened carefully. They learned the human languages. They studied human culture. And they found something strange. Humans talked about war. A lot. Their history was filled with battles and conflicts. Their entertainment showed violence and fighting. Their news spoke of tensions between nations. This worried the Zinthari High Council. They debated for many decades about whether to make contact with such an aggressive species. In the end, they decided to try. After all, the Zinthari had never met a species they could not befriend. Perhaps the humans just needed guidance. Perhaps they needed to see that there was a better way to live. So they sent a fleet of 12 ships. All of them were painted white, the Zinthari color of peace. None of them carried weapons. This was tradition. The Zinthari always came to new species with open arms and empty hands. Lieutenant Winthos approached the ambassador. She was young, with bright green skin and nervous movements. Her job was to monitor the ship's sensors and report anything unusual. "Ambassador," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "We are approaching the outer edge of human space. I am detecting some structures ahead." Krelvathis turned to face her. "What kind of structures, Lieutenant?" "I am not sure, sir. They are very large. Let me bring up the display." She touched a control panel, and a holographic image appeared in the air between them. It showed a frozen moon orbiting a distant planet. But that was not what caught everyone's attention. Around the moon were hundreds of massive structures. They looked like skeletal frames, giant cages of metal floating in the darkness. Inside these frames were ships, dozens of ships in various stages of construction. These were shipyards, human shipyards. The bridge crew gathered around the display, their eyes wide with confusion. The Zinthari had never seen anything like this. Their own shipyards were small and produced maybe 1 or 2 vessels per year. These human facilities looked like they could produce hundreds. "Zoom in on one of the completed vessels," Krelvathis ordered. The image shifted, focusing on a ship that was moving away from the construction area. The ambassador felt his heart skip a beat. The human ship was massive. It was larger than most space stations the Zinthari had ever built. Its hull was dark, gray, almost black, and it was covered with strange protrusions. Krelvathis did not recognize them at first. Then his translator database provided the answer. Weapons. The ship was covered with weapons. Gun turrets lined the vessel's sides like teeth on some ancient predator. Missile tubes dotted its surface. The front of the ship was shaped like a blade, designed to cut through anything in its path. "By the eternal light," Inthos whispered. "That is a warship." "There are more," another officer said. "I count 47 similar vessels in this sector alone, and the shipyards are building more." Krelvathis felt something cold settle in his stomach. In 300 years of space travel, the Zinthari had never seen a military force like this. Most species they encountered had a few armed vessels for protection against asteroids or pirates. But this was different. This was an army. "Perhaps they have enemies we do not know about," Krelvathis said, trying to sound calm. "Perhaps they need these ships for defense." No one on the bridge looked convinced. But no one argued either. "Continue on our course," the ambassador ordered. "We came here to make friends, and that is what we will do. The humans will see that we mean no harm." The fleet moved deeper into human space. With every hour that passed, They saw more evidence of human military power. Defense platforms orbited every planet and moon. Patrol ships moved in coordinated formations. Communication satellites filled the space between worlds, watching everything that moved. The Zinthari had traveled through the territories of many species. They had seen advanced civilizations with beautiful cities and amazing technology. But they had never seen anything like this level of military preparation. It was as if the humans expected an attack at any moment. "Ambassador," Yinthos said suddenly, "I am detecting a large energy signature behind the fourth planet. Something is there. Something big. Can you identify it?" "Not yet, sir. It is hidden in the planet's shadow. But the energy readings are. I have never seen anything like them. The power output is higher than our entire fleet combined." Krelvathis stared at the display, watching the fourth planet grow larger as they approached. He had a bad feeling about what they would find there. His instincts told him to turn around, to go home and report what they had seen, but he was a diplomat. Running away was not his nature. "Hold our course," he said, "and open a channel on all frequencies. Let them know we are here and that we come in peace." The communications officer sent out the message. It was a standard greeting, translated into every human language the Zinthari knew. It spoke of friendship and cooperation. It expressed hope for a peaceful future between their species. For several long minutes, there was no response. Then something began to move behind the planet. Yinthos made a sound of pure terror. The display showed an object emerging from the shadow, catching the light of the distant sun. It was a ship, but calling it a ship felt wrong. Like calling an ocean a puddle. The vessel was enormous. It stretched across the display like a metal mountain. Its hull was black and covered with armor plates the size of buildings. Weapons bristled from every surface. Fighter craft poured from openings along its sides like insects from a hive. 12 kilometers, Yinthos said, her voice barely a whisper. "The ship is 12 kilometers long." The bridge was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Krelvathis stared at the monster before him and felt his confidence shatter like glass. In that moment, he understood something terrible. The Zinthari had spent 300 years believing they understood the galaxy. They thought they knew what was out there. They thought all intelligent life wanted the same things they did. They were wrong. The humans were not like them. The humans had built weapons that could destroy worlds. They had armies that could conquer star systems. And now, one of their greatest warships was turning toward the Zinthari fleet. The ambassador straightened his robes and tried to calm his racing hearts. Whatever happened next, he would face it with dignity. He was a representative of his people, but for the first time in 200 years, Krelvathis was afraid. The human ship completed its turn. Its weapons tracked the Zinthari vessels like eyes following prey. And on the hull, painted in letters large enough to see from space, was a single word: Leviathan. The Titan had awakened. The Leviathan filled the view screen like a bad dream that refused to end. Ambassador Krelvathis watched as the massive warship turned slowly toward his fleet. Every movement it made seemed deliberate and patient, like a predator that knew its prey had nowhere to run. "All stations report," Krelvathis ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. The responses came back quickly. All 12 Zinthari ships were undamaged and holding position. Their shields were at full power, though everyone knew those shields were designed to protect against space debris, not weapons fire. Against the guns of that human monster, their shields would last seconds at most. Lieutenant Yinthos worked frantically at her sensor station. Her 4 eyes moved in different directions as she processed the incoming data. Her hands trembled as they touched the controls. "Ambassador," she said, "I am getting clearer readings now. The Leviathan is a Titangent-class dreadnought. It is the largest class of warship in the human fleet. How many weapons does it carry?" Yinthos hesitated before answering. "Over 800 gun turrets of various sizes, 200 missile launchers, 40 fighter bays with approximately 1,000 small attack craft, and something else, sir. Something in the center of the ship. The energy signature is. I do not know what it is, but it is powerful enough to crack a planet's crust." The bridge crew exchanged horrified looks. The Zinthari had nothing that could match such firepower. Their entire civilization had nothing that could match such firepower. "They are hailing us," the communications officer announced. Krelvathis took a deep breath. This was the moment he had trained his entire life for. First contact with a new species. The beginning of a friendship that could last for generations. But as he looked at the Leviathan, He felt no hope, only fear. "Put them through," he said. The view screen flickered, and a human face appeared. It was a female. Krelvathis knew from his studies of human biology. Her skin was dark brown, and her hair was cut very short. Deep lines marked her face, the signs of age and stress. Her eyes were dark and cold, showing no warmth or welcome. She wore a uniform of deep blue, decorated with medals and badges that Krelvathis did not recognize, but he understood their meaning. This was a warrior, a leader of warriors, unidentified vessels. The human spoke. Her voice was low and hard, like stones grinding together. "You have entered sovereign human space. I am Admiral Helena Vance of the United Earth Navy vessel Leviathan. State your intentions immediately. You have 60 seconds to respond." A timer appeared on the screen. 60 seconds. 59. 58. Krelvathis stepped forward. His tentacles spread in the traditional Zinthari gesture of peace. "Admiral Vance," he began, speaking carefully so the translator could do its work. "I am Ambassador Krelvathis of the Zinthari Collective. My people have traveled far to meet yours. We detected your radio signals many years ago and have come to welcome humanity into the galactic community." The Admiral's expression did not change. The timer continued counting down. 45 seconds. 44. "We come in peace," Krelvathis continued. "Our ships carry no weapons. We bring only gifts and offers of friendship. The Zinthari have helped many species reach the stars. We wish to do the same for humanity." 30 seconds. 29. Admiral Vance leaned forward in her chair. Her eyes studied the ambassador with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. It was like being examined by a predator, deciding whether to attack. "You brought 12 ships," she said slowly. 12 ships into unknown space, to meet a species you have never contacted before." She paused. "And you say these ships carry no weapons?" "That is correct," Krelvathis said proudly. "Violence is not our way. We believe that kindness and understanding can solve any problem." The timer stopped at 15 seconds. Admiral Vance held up one hand, and Krelvathis heard her give an order to someone off-screen. "Commander Chen, full tactical scan of the alien vessels. Confirm weapons status." There was a pause. Then a male voice responded from somewhere beyond the camera's view. "Confirmed, Admiral. 0 weapon signatures on any of the 12 ships. Their hull plating is minimal, civilian grade at best. Shield generators are basic navigation models. No military systems detected." Admiral Vance sat back in her chair. The cold expression on her face shifted slightly. Krelvathis expected to see relief or perhaps welcome. Instead, he saw something that confused him. Pity. "Ambassador Krelvathis," the Admiral said quietly, "do you have any idea how lucky you are? I do not understand. Lucky that you found us first." She gestured to someone off-screen, and the view screen split into 2 images. On one side was Admiral Vance. On the other was a tactical display showing the space around the Leviathan. Krelvathis felt his heart stop. Behind the Titangent-class dreadnought was a fleet. Not just a few ships, but an entire armada waiting in the darkness. He counted quickly. 100 warships at least, ranging from small, fast vessels to several more giants nearly as large as the Leviathan itself. "We detected your fleet 3 days ago," Admiral Vance explained. "We watched you cross the outer boundary of our space. We saw your ships, your energy signatures, your complete lack of military capability, and we mobilized." "You thought we were a threat?" Krelvathis asked, confused. "No, Ambassador. We thought you might be bait." The word hung in the air like poison. Krelvathis did not understand its meaning. "Bait?" Admiral Vance leaned forward again. When she spoke, her voice was almost gentle, like a parent explaining something terrible to a child. "In 300 years of spacefaring, you have never encountered a predator species. Have you? You have never met a race that did not want to be your friend. A race that evolved through violence and hunting. A race that looks at other intelligent beings and sees only food or enemies." Krelvathis felt cold spread through his body. "No, we have not." "Then you do not understand the galaxy, Ambassador. The real galaxy." The Admiral's eyes grew distant, as if she was remembering something painful. "There are things out here that would look at your fleet and see an easy meal. They would destroy your ships, take your people, and do things to them that you cannot imagine. But we come in peace," Krelvathis said weakly. "Peace means nothing to them. Kindness means nothing. Your good intentions would not save you. Admiral Vance pointed at the tactical display, at the 100 warships waiting in the dark. That is why we are here. Not to attack you, but to protect you from what might be following you. The ambassador looked at the fleet, at the Leviathan, at the weapons and soldiers and machines of war. He had thought these things were meant to threaten the Zinthari. Now he realized the truth. The humans had come to save them. You have been traveling through space for 3 centuries, Admiral Vance continued. Building friendships, spreading kindness. That is admirable, Ambassador. Truly. But you have been doing it in the safe parts of the galaxy, the quiet corners where the monsters do not hunt. She stood up from her chair and walked closer to the camera. Humanity has been in space for 70 years. And in that time, we have learned a terrible truth. The universe is not kind. It is not peaceful. It is dark and cold and filled with things that want to kill you. How do you know this? Krelvathis whispered. Admiral Vance's expression hardened into something cold and unforgiving. Because they killed 40 million of our people before we learned to fight back. The bridge of the gentle whisper was completely silent. Every Zinthari stared at the screen, at the human admiral, at the fleet behind her. They had come expecting friendship and welcome. They had found something else entirely. They had found guardians, terrible, violent guardians standing watch against horrors the Zinthari had never imagined. Ambassador, Admiral Vance said, I think you need to come aboard the Leviathan. There are things you need to see, things your people need to understand. Krelvathis looked at his crew, at their frightened faces and trembling bodies. He looked at the massive warship filling his view screen. He thought about everything he believed about the galaxy and realized it might all be wrong. Very well, Admiral, he said. I will come. The connection ended. The view screen returned to showing the Leviathan in all its terrible glory, and Ambassador Krelvathis prepared to learn the truth about the universe. The shuttle ride to the Leviathan took only 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. Ambassador Krelvathis sat in the small vessel with 2 of his aides, watching through the windows as the Titan grew larger and larger before them. Up close, the warship was even more terrifying. Its hull was not smooth like Zinthari ships. It was rough and scarred, covered with dents and scratches and marks of old damage. This ship had seen battle, many battles, and it had survived them all. The shuttle entered through a massive opening in the Leviathan's side. Inside was a hangar bay larger than most Zinthari buildings. Rows of fighter craft lined the walls. Soldiers in heavy armor stood at attention. Everything was painted in shades of gray and black. There were no decorations, no art, no beauty. This was a place built for war and nothing else. A group of humans waited at the bottom of the shuttle's ramp. They wore the same blue uniforms as Admiral Vance, though with fewer medals. Their faces were serious and watchful. Ambassador Krelvathis, one of them said, stepping forward. I am Commander Sarah Chen, First Officer of the Leviathan. The Admiral is waiting for you. Please follow me. Krelvathis and his aides followed the commander through the ship. The corridors were wide enough for the ambassador's tentacles to move freely, but everything else felt cramped and heavy. The walls were thick metal. The doors were reinforced. Emergency stations with weapons and medical supplies appeared at regular intervals. Your ship is very practical, Krelvathis said, trying to make conversation. Commander Chen glanced back at him. The Leviathan is designed to keep fighting even when half of it is destroyed. Every section can be sealed off. Every system has backups. We learned a long time ago that pretty ships die first. They passed a window looking into a training area. Krelvathis stopped to watch. Inside, dozens of human soldiers were fighting each other with padded weapons. They moved with speed and violence that shocked the ambassador. Even in practice, they fought like their lives depended on it. Your people train very hard, he observed. We have to, Commander Chen replied. The things we fight are faster and stronger than us. The only way we survive is by being better trained and better equipped. They continued walking. Krelvathis noticed something else strange about the crew members they passed. Many of them had scars on their faces and hands. Some were missing limbs, replaced with mechanical parts. One soldier walked past with an eye that glowed with artificial light. These were not fresh recruits. These were veterans, survivors. Finally, they reached a large door marked with the words, Strategic Command. The door opened, and they entered a circular room filled with holographic displays and control stations. Admiral Vance stood in the center, studying a map of the galaxy. Ambassador, she said without turning around. Thank you for coming. I am not sure I had a choice, Krelvathis replied. The Admiral turned to face him. For a moment, something like a smile crossed her face. You did have a choice. You could have run. Your ships are faster than ours. But you stayed. She gestured to a chair. Please, sit. We have much to discuss. Krelvathis settled into the chair, his tentacles coiling around him nervously. His aides stood behind him, equally uncomfortable. Tell me about your people, Admiral Vance said. How long have the Zinthari traveled among the stars? Over 300 years. We have explored perhaps 1/10 of the galaxy in that time. And in 300 years you never built weapons? Never fought a war? There was no need. Every species we encountered wanted friendship, trade, cultural exchange. We found that kindness was the most powerful tool for building relationships. Admiral Vance nodded slowly. She touched a control, and the holographic display changed. It now showed a map of the galaxy, with different regions marked in various colors. This is how humanity sees the galaxy, Ambassador. The green areas are safe, peaceful civilizations, stable governments, species that want the same things your people want. She pointed to a large section of green that included Zinthari space. You have spent 3 centuries exploring the garden, the nice part of the universe. Her finger moved to other regions of the map. These were marked in red. These are the danger zones, territories controlled by species that do not want friendship. They want conquest, resources, food. She paused. Some of them consider intelligent species to be food. Krelvathis stared at the red zones. There were so many of them. Far more than the green areas. We never knew. He said quietly. No, you didn't. Admiral Vance touched another control, and an image appeared on the main screen. It showed a planet, blue and green and beautiful. This was New Eden, she said. Our first colony world. 40 million people lived there. Farmers, scientists, families with children. They were building a new home for humanity. The image changed. Now it showed the same planet, but something was wrong. The green areas were brown. The blue oceans were gray. Massive dark shapes covered the surface like a disease. 23 years after we founded the colony, they came. The HFY. A new image appeared. Krelvathis felt his stomach's turn. The creatures were enormous, insect-like beings with armored bodies and bladed limbs. Their mouths were filled with rows of teeth. Their eyes were empty and black, showing no intelligence or mercy. The HFY are a hive species, Admiral Vance explained. They travel from world to world, consuming everything. Plants, animals, people. When they finish eating a planet, they move to the next one. What happened to New Eden? Krelvathis asked, though he already knew the answer. They ate everyone. 40 million men, women, and children. The HFY do not take prisoners. They do not negotiate. They simply feed. The Admiral's voice was steady, but Krelvathis could see the pain in her eyes. This was not ancient history to her. This was personal. We tried to fight them, she continued. Our early ships were like yours, Ambassador, built for exploration and science. They lasted about 3 minutes against HFY attack vessels. How did you survive? Admiral Vance smiled, but there was no happiness in it. Only cold determination. We changed. We stopped being explorers and became warriors. Every nation on Earth united under one government. Every factory started building weapons. Every scientist started working on new ways to kill. She touched another control, and the display showed a timeline. Ships appeared in sequence, each one larger and more heavily armed than the last. In 5 years, we built the first Titangent-class dreadnought. In 10 years, we had a fleet. In 20 years, we pushed the HFY back to their home system. And then, we burned them. Every ship, every station, every egg in every nest on every world they controlled. We did not stop until there were no HFY left alive anywhere in the galaxy. Krelvathis sat in stunned silence. The Zinthari believed in kindness, in understanding, in finding peaceful solutions to every problem. The humans had faced a problem that could not be solved with kindness, so they had solved it with fire. You think we are monsters, Admiral Vance said. It was not a question. I think, Krelvathis replied carefully, that you did what you had to do to survive. Yes, we did. The Admiral turned back to the map. And after the HFY, we found others, the Silthak, who enslave other species, and work them to death. The Morhacks, who spread disease to weaken worlds before invading. The Vorn Collective, who believe all other life forms are abominations to be destroyed. More red zones appeared on the map. So many red zones. We have been fighting for 50 years, Ambassador. Holding the line. Protecting the peaceful parts of the galaxy from the things that want to destroy them. Krelvathis looked at the map. At the vast territories marked in red. At the thin line of human military bases separating them from the green zones. You are guardians, he said slowly. We are weapons, Admiral Vance replied. We became what we had to become so that species like yours could remain what you are. She turned to face him directly, her dark eyes filled with something that might have been sadness. Welcome to the real galaxy, Ambassador. It is not as kind as you believed. Ambassador Krelvathis spent 3 days aboard the Leviathan. Admiral Vance had given him access to the human historical archives, and he had spent every waking moment studying them. What he learned changed everything he believed about the universe. The humans kept detailed records of every conflict they had fought, every battle, every victory, every loss. Krelvathis watched footage of human soldiers fighting monsters in the corridors of dying ships. He read reports of planets evacuated just hours before enemy fleets arrived. He studied the numbers of lives saved and lives lost. The numbers were staggering. In 50 years of warfare, humanity had lost over 2 billion people. 2 billion fathers and mothers and children, killed by aliens who saw them as food or slaves, or simply obstacles to be removed. The Zinthari had never experienced loss on such a scale. They could not even imagine it. But the humans had not broken. They had not surrendered. They had built bigger ships and better weapons. They had trained harder and fought smarter. They had turned their grief into fuel for a war machine that now spanned half the galaxy. On the second day, Commander Chen took Krelvathis to meet some of the ship's crew. She led him to a recreation area where off-duty soldiers were eating and talking. The ambassador noticed something interesting. Many of the crew members were not human. There were tall beings with gray skin and large black eyes. There were small furry creatures that moved in groups of 3 or 4. There were massive reptilian warriors with scales and claws. All of them wore human uniforms. All of them were part of the Leviathan's crew. I do not understand, Krelvathis said. Your species is at war. Why do you allow others to serve on your ships? Commander Chen smiled. It was the first genuine smile he had seen from a human. These are survivors, she explained. Their species were being exterminated by the enemies we fight. We saved them. We offered them a choice. Live in safety on protected worlds, or join us and fight back against the things that tried to destroy them. And they chose to fight? Many of them did. The Kalari, she pointed to the gray-skinned beings, lost their homeworld to the Vorn Collective. The Mittani, she gestured at the furry creatures, were harvested as food by the Krethvor before we destroyed them. The Draken, she indicated the reptilian warriors, were enslaved by the Silthak for 300 years. Krelvathis watched the mixed crew eating and laughing together. He had assumed humans were alone in their war. He was wrong. How many species have you saved? He asked. 43. Commander Chen replied. Some were nearly extinct when we found them. Others just needed help evacuating before their worlds were conquered. We gave them shelter. We gave them ships and weapons if they wanted them. We gave them a chance to survive. The Zinthari have uplifted 12 species, Krelvathis said quietly. We were so proud of that number. You should be proud. You helped them grow. You taught them peace and kindness. The commander's smile faded. We teach them how to kill. We teach them how to survive in a galaxy that wants them dead. Different lessons for different parts of the universe. Later that day, Admiral Vance invited the ambassador to observe a military briefing. Officers from several ships gathered in a large conference room to discuss current operations. Krelvathis sat in the back and listened. The briefing covered 3 active combat zones. In one sector, human forces were evacuating a civilian population while holding off a Silthak slave fleet. In another, a joint human-Draken task force was hunting down a Morhax plague ship before it could reach inhabited worlds. In the third, scouts were tracking a new threat that had emerged from unexplored space. The officers spoke in calm, professional tones. They discussed casualties and supply lines and tactical options, as if they were talking about the weather. This was normal for them. This was everyday life. Krelvathis felt sick. After the briefing, Admiral Vance approached him. She must have seen the horror on his face. "It is overwhelming at first," she said. "The scale of it. The constant fighting. I remember when I was young, I thought there had to be another way. A peaceful solution. What changed your mind?" "I watched the Morax release a plague on a colony world. 7 million people died in 3 days. They melted from the inside out while their families watched." The Admiral's voice was flat and empty. "There is no peaceful solution with enemies like that, Ambassador. Only war." They walked together through the corridors of the Leviathan. Krelvathis noticed that the crew members they passed treated the Admiral with deep respect. They did not fear her. They trusted her. "May I ask a personal question?" he said. "You may. Why do you do this? Why do you keep fighting? The cost to your species has been terrible. You could hide, build defenses around your home system and let the rest of the galaxy burn." Admiral Vance stopped walking. She turned to face a window that looked out at the stars. "We tried that once," she said. "After New Eden fell, there were voices calling for retreat. Build walls," they said. "Protect our own world, and forget about everything else." What happened? We received a message. A distress call from a species called the Tilani. They were peaceful explorers, much like your people. They had found something in deep space, something that was hunting them. The Admiral's voice grew soft, almost gentle. By the time we decided to help, it was too late. The Tilani are extinct now. Every single one of them. Gone. Because we were too afraid to act. She turned to face Krelvathis. Her eyes were bright with old pain. After that, we made a choice. We would never hide again. We would never let another species die because we were too scared to help. If there were monsters in the darkness, we would hunt them. If there were innocents in danger, we would save them. Even at the cost of your own people? Even then. Admiral Vance reached up and touched a medal on her chest. "I lost my husband to the Silthak. My son was killed fighting the Vorn. My daughter serves on a destroyer near Krethvor space." She lowered her hand. "Every person on this ship has lost someone they loved. But we keep fighting because the alternative is worse." Krelvathis was silent for a long moment. He thought about his own people, safe in their peaceful corner of the galaxy. He thought about the centuries they had spent making friends and exploring the stars, never knowing about the horrors that existed beyond their borders. "The Zinthari owe you a great debt," he finally said. "A debt we did not even know we had. You owe us nothing, Ambassador. We do not fight for payment or gratitude. We fight because someone has to." She started walking again. "But there is something your people can do, something we cannot do ourselves. Name it. The species we save. They are broken, traumatized. They have seen their families killed and their worlds destroyed. They need healing that we cannot provide. We are soldiers, Ambassador. We know how to fight. We do not know how to help someone recover from horror." She stopped in front of a door and touched the control panel. The door opened, revealing a medical ward. Inside were beings from several different species, lying in beds or sitting in chairs. Medical staff moved among them, but these patients were not physically injured. Their wounds were in their minds. "The Zinthari have spent 3 centuries learning how to bring people together," Admiral Vance said. "Learning how to heal conflicts and build trust. That is what these survivors need. Kindness, understanding, peace." Krelvathis looked at the suffering beings in the medical ward. He thought about all the skills his people had developed over hundreds of years. Skills that seemed useless in a galaxy at war, but perhaps they were not useless after all. "I think," he said slowly, "that the Zinthari and humanity have much to offer each other." Admiral Vance nodded. For the first time, the hardness in her face softened slightly. "I think you may be right, Ambassador." Ambassador Krelvathis returned to the Zinthari collective, a changed being. His ship crossed through the peaceful green zones of the galaxy, past friendly species and quiet trading posts. And every light year felt different now. He saw the beauty of this region with new eyes. He also saw how fragile it was. The High Council gathered to hear his report. They met in the great chamber on the Zinthari homeworld, a vast hall of white stone and flowing water. 12 elders sat in a circle, waiting to hear what their ambassador had discovered about humanity. Krelvathis stood before them and spoke for 6 hours. He told them about the Leviathan and its 800 weapons. He told them about the Krethvor and the 40 million dead on New Eden. He told them about the Silthak slave masters and the Morax plague carriers and the Vorn collective that considered all other life forms to be mistakes that needed correcting. He told them about the red zones on the human star maps, the regions of space filled with predators and monsters that the Zinthari had never encountered because they had never traveled that far from home. And he told them about humanity, the young species that had lost 2 billion of their own people defending a galaxy that did not even know it needed defending. When he finished, the council chamber was silent. "We have been children," Krelvathis said, his voice heavy with emotion. "We have been playing in a garden, picking flowers and singing songs, while monsters lurked beyond the walls. Walls that we never knew existed. Walls that humanity built, with their blood and their sacrifice." Elder Tolmeri, the oldest member of the council, spoke first. Her voice was thin with age, but her mind was still sharp. "What do you suggest we do, Ambassador? Shall we build weapons, train soldiers, become like the humans?" "No." Krelvathis shook his head, his tentacles moving gently. "That is not our nature. We are healers, not fighters. We are builders of peace, not war. If we try to become something we are not, we will fail." "Then what can we do?" another elder asked. "If the galaxy is as dangerous as you say, how can we survive without weapons?" "We survive by working with those who have them. The humans do not want us to fight. They do not need our weapons or our ships. What they need is something else, something only we can provide." Krelvathis touched a control, and holographic images appeared in the center of the chamber. They showed the medical ward on the Leviathan, filled with traumatized survivors from a dozen different species. The humans have saved 43 species from extinction, but saving a body is not the same as healing a soul. These survivors have seen horrors that we cannot imagine. They have lost everything: their homes, their families, their sense of safety in the universe. The humans can protect them, but they cannot help them recover. He looked around at the elders, at the leaders of his peaceful civilization. "That is what we do. That is what we have always done. We heal, we comfort, we bring hope to those who have lost it. The humans fight the monsters. We can heal the wounds they leave behind." The debate lasted for months. Some elders argued that the Zinthari should remain isolated, safe in their peaceful corner of the galaxy. Others wanted to arm themselves, to never again be helpless against potential threats. But slowly, gradually, a new consensus emerged. The Zinthari would not become warriors. They would become partners. A treaty was drafted, unlike any agreement in Zinthari history. It was not about trade or cultural exchange or mutual defense. It was about two species with different gifts working together to serve the galaxy. The humans would continue to fight. They would stand on the walls and face the darkness. They would hunt the predators and protect the innocent. The Zinthari would follow behind them. They would establish healing centers on liberated worlds. They would send counselors and therapists to work with trauma survivors. They would teach peace and hope to species that had known only war and fear. Each species would do what they did best. Together, they would be more effective than either could be alone. The signing ceremony took place aboard the Leviathan, in the same strategic command center where Krelvathis had first learned the truth about the galaxy. Admiral Helena Vance stood on one side of a simple table. Ambassador Krelvathis stood on the other. Behind them, officers from both species watched in silence. Human soldiers in their dark blue uniforms, Zinthari diplomats in their white ceremonial robes, two civilizations that could not have been more different, coming together in common cause. "Before we sign," Krelvathis said, "I must tell you something, Admiral." "Yes?" "When I first saw the Leviathan, when your ship emerged from behind that planet, I felt terror, pure terror. I thought we had found our destroyers. I thought our peaceful exploration of the galaxy had finally led us to a species that would end us." Admiral Vance listened without expression, waiting for him to continue. "I was wrong." The ambassador's tentacles spread in the gesture of respect. "You are not destroyers, Admiral. You are guardians. You have stood in the darkness for 50 years, fighting and dying so that species like mine could continue to believe the galaxy was kind." He reached across the table and took her hand in his tentacle, the human gesture of friendship that he had learned during his time on the ship. "You deserve to be honored, not feared. All of humanity deserves that. And I hope this treaty is the beginning of the galaxy finally understanding what you have sacrificed for all of us." Admiral Vance looked at their joined hands. When she looked up, Krelvathis saw something he had never seen in her eyes before. Tears. Not many. Just a few. Quickly blinked away. But they were there. "Ambassador," she said, her voice rougher than usual. "We did not fight for gratitude. We fought because it was right. Because someone had to. Because we could not stand by and watch innocent species die. I know. That makes you even more worthy of honor." The Admiral was silent for a moment. Then she squared her shoulders and picked up the stylus to sign the treaty. "Let's make this official, Ambassador. We have work to do." They signed. First Admiral Vance with her precise human signature. Then Krelvathis with the flowing marks of Zinthari script. The treaty was sealed. The partnership had begun. Afterward, as the two delegations mingled and talked, Krelvathis stood by a window and looked out at the stars. The Leviathan hung in space around them, 12 kilometers of human determination and sacrifice. A monster built to fight monsters. A weapon that had become a shield. Admiral Vance joined him at the window. "What are you thinking, Ambassador?" "I am thinking about the future. About what our species can accomplish together. About the wounded souls we can heal, and the civilizations we can protect. It will not be easy. The fighting will not stop. The enemies we face are not going away. I know. But now you will not face them alone. And when the fighting is done, we will be there to help rebuild what was broken." She nodded slowly. For a long moment, they stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. "Ambassador," Vance said finally, "earlier today you said you felt terror when you first saw our ship." "Yes. What do you feel now?" Krelvathis considered the question carefully. He looked at the Leviathan around them, at the weapons and armor and machines of war. He thought about the humans who crewed this vessel, the soldiers who had lost so much and kept fighting anyway. "Hope," he said. "I feel hope." Admiral Vance smiled. It was a small smile, tired and worn, but real. "That's more than we've felt in a long time, Ambassador. Maybe you're already healing us." Outside the window, the human fleet held position around the diplomatic vessels, titans of war standing guard over ships of peace, predators protecting prey, weapons defending the defenseless, and somewhere in the darkness beyond, the monsters waited. But humanity stood ready. Humanity always stood ready, and now, they were not alone.